Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It is me, the Mysterious Cameraman, and today we are doing another one of our Christopher Nolan time definition videos, where we're going to be talking about a review of this movie and also doing like an analysis of the way time works in it. And today we are talking about Tenet. So this is one of Christopher Nolan's most polarizing films. Honestly, it's his most polarizing film. Came out in 2020, and I think some people loved this film and some people hated it. And I've seen Tenet twice now, and I've had a really interesting relationship with it in the same way I had with Memento. Tenet was actually one of my first Christopher Nolan films because I loved the three Batman movies, and I saw Oppenheimer, and people were like, you should watch more Christopher Nolan. So that's only 5 of his, at that point, 12 films. So 5, yeah, 3 Batman, Oppenheimer. So that's like 4, whatever. And after I saw Oppenheimer, I saw the 3 Batmans, I ended up seeing Inception, and I loved it. And then I saw Tenet. So it was like halfway there, it was like in the mix. But I saw Tenet, and I had a really interesting feeling when watching it because I really did enjoy the movie. I thought there were so many parts I loved about it. I loved the concept of it. I thought it was Christopher Nolan's hardest film to follow. And I went online, and I still thought it was a great film. But I went online, and a lot of people were like, I don't get Tenet. It's so confusing. It was a bad film. And I think on my first watch, I understood about 70% of the movie. I understood it. I think the concept of, I think most people understand at least half of Tenet. You understand the concepts, you understand most of the timeline, things like that. I think then it gets a little bit harder, what's the main goal of the people, and then it gets really hard towards the end. And I think for a few years, I kind of went about with Tenet. I was like, I understood Tenet, I did enjoy Tenet, and it's not as good as some of the others. So when I started rewatching Christopher Nolan films after The Odyssey came out, and I said, you know what, it's time for me to revisit Tenet. I think it's time for me to really sit down and challenge myself with this movie. So I watched Tenet again, and I had a really interesting feeling with it because I loved it. I loved a lot of Tenet. I think the film is incredibly shot. I think there's so many beautiful things about it. And I feel like it's a really classic spy movie. I love the way that there are so many different things going on, and it's this really great spy thriller. And I think it's still confusing to follow, but on my second watch, I think I got about 90-95% of the film. I think it's very hard to get 100%. I think a lot of people can watch Tenet for 5 times and still not understand it. So I think even 90% of it to make this video, in my opinion, is really strong. But when I'm talking about Tenet, when I think about it, I think it is a really great masterpiece. I think it's a really great film. It's definitely another like 9 out of 10 from Christopher Nolan. And I think the challenge with this film is very similar to the challenge I had with Memento, just a little bit flipped. I think this film has a really interesting plot and a really interesting thing, but this film is built around the concept. Without the concept, this film is not going to happen, which I think is the thing with many Christopher Nolan films, but I think specifically with this one, this whole film is meant to demonstrate this concept of inverted time. This film isn't about the main characters, it isn't about the villains, and I think even when you think about the villains of the film, it's not a flashy villain. The villain isn't doing these great things, and we don't even fully understand the weapon, the algorithm that the villain's using. This film is made specifically to demonstrate Christopher Nolan's idea and concept of inverted time, which is definitely not a bad thing. I think it's such a fascinating concept. And it leads to some people leaving this film and not necessarily loving it, because instead of them watching a film that they are in love with and they're enjoying and they think it's incredible, they're instead looking at a film that is just kind of interesting because they're not fully understanding what's going on, which I think is a very interesting challenge to be stuck in, because for the fact that this film is great, it also is definitely a hard film to follow. So I think it's really interesting for this film's greatest challenge to be just the fact that its concept is so grand. But when I watched this film, I think the first 45 minutes I liked, I didn't love. I think there was a lot going on. And I think something to the film's detriment is that there is so much going on in the first 30-45 minutes that has nothing to do with the inverted time. We see moments of it, things like that. But the majority of the first bit of the film is just a spy thriller that's moving way too fast. And I think that's where the film really gets dragged down. I think if there was a little bit less going on at the beginning, the pacing was a little bit slower, and we got a little bit more explanation about what's going on, I think it would set up the inverted time bit more. I think it's hard for people to already be confused about the plot, confused about what's going on, who a lot of the characters are because it's moving so quickly, and suddenly be put in a situation where they have to now understand this whole new concept that's so confusing. And I think what's could have been very beneficial to this film is if they instead slowed down a little bit at the beginning, so we understood the world we were in a little bit better. And then when the inverted time came, it would still be harder to understand, but it would still be so confusing in Christopher Nolan's way of mind-bending stuff. And at least audiences will be a little bit more equipped, so I think more people would understand the movie than they currently do. And I think that's something that could have benefited the film a lot. Because in my opinion, when I was watching the film, I liked it, I was enjoying it, but I didn't love it until we really got into the inverted time stuff. I think until we got there, I think the film was good. I don't think it was great. I think once we got there, the film really turned it up to 11. And what I just love so many parts of this film, where, especially once the inverted time comes apart, I think it turns a spy thriller that initially was to this spy thriller that we've never seen before. Because I think there were parts of the original spy thriller that we had, and like the fire truck scene and the 4 trucks. I love that car chase. I love it so much. And I love when the car's like moving in reverse in that inverted time sense. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the film. I just love that whole car sequence and the way the inverted time works with that. And I think on the flip side of that, no joke intended, I think it almost doesn't, the world, I think, needed more fleshing out at the beginning and a little bit less of the straight time stuff, so the inverted time could become more of the film. Because at the end of the day, this whole film is about inverted time. And I think when you get to the end of the film, you know that the inverted time has been going on in the beginning because he hired himself. And I think one of my challenges is just that I think they did so much at the start of the film that by the time you got to the middle portion, the inverted stuff started, you were already confused. And I think that's my biggest gripe with the film, because I think if I went into that part enjoying the film a little bit more and not being like, this is going on. And once the inverted stuff started, I almost was like, oh, I kind of understand where this is going now, especially on my second start. I was like, this is where the film gets real. I'm really excited to see it come together. But I just feel like they needed to do a little bit less at the start, maybe 1 or 2 of the sequences out or things like that, or just 1 or 2 less errands and things like that, just so things could tone down a little bit and the information could be given a little bit more straightforward, so we understood and took in the information a little bit better, so the actual inverted time part became more at the forefront. Because I think if you went into this film primed and ready to go, and then it was a good film, you were understanding it, most of it, like 90% going into the inverted part, you probably would walk out with it like 70%. But because you're already going in at like a 50% focus, you're not going to get much of the ending, which is a really hard thing with this film. But how does the inverted time work? You can see better videos with better explanations and more visual diagrams and things like that. But I really love the way the inverted time functions, because you enter this machine, you come out the other side, and suddenly everything in the world is flipped. So you yourself are the same. Anything on your body is the same. But for example, the wind's coming at you the other direction. The birds are moving the opposite direction with physics literally being up. So gravity's pulling you, in theory, gravity's pulling you up instead of down. Or I believe it's gravity still present, but they are being affected by gravity differently. I'm not fully sure the gravity part of it, but it's still there. I believe it's pulling you down, but it's not functioning because the wind is different, so the wind's moving the opposite direction. I'm not fully sure, but I really like that. I like the way that in the cars, the friction's different because the friction's moving the opposite direction. So driving the car theoretically is the same, but the way the car feels, the way it's moving, the way that braking and stuff happens is so different. You have to go on the opposite side of the road and things like that. I think so many things like that, in my opinion, are incredibly fascinating parts of the film. Because I really love the way that this film just functions as being such a fascinating craft. Because I think when you look at the first part and you're watching, you're like, what's going on? Why are these people moving in backwards? And I think there are so many stunning pieces, like when the car's moving backwards. And when, like, for example, he gets into a fight with himself, but he doesn't know it's himself, and they're just like, the other person's just doing all these weird moves, but when you see it the second time, it's because he's doing normal moves that just look weird when you're doing them backwards. And I think it's such a way that just makes the film so interesting to watch, and such an interesting concept for the film to be told through. And for me, I really love this function in the sense that I love the way that the film even just visualizes this inverted versus normal. I love the red versus the blue and this coloring. I love how in the original, in the rooms, when we see like the villain shoot his wife, Like when he shoots him and the bullet comes through in the glass and you see the bullet holes in the glass, I think it's such a fascinating way to show this is what's about to happen, and they know it's about to happen. And then they can use the fact that they know this is going to happen in the near future to alter their present. I think that's such a fascinating way to go about it and to tell that story and to also kind of know what's going to happen next. And I really love, for example, like there are so many weird things that happen in this film, especially when you're looking at it from the normal time. But when you look at it inverted, I think it makes the film so much more interesting, and you get to understand it a lot differently and experience it through a whole new lens. And I think something that would be very interesting if you watch this film, or if the film was told firstly from an inverted lens and then from the original lens, I think it would have the same effect. That you're still learning what happened in the past versus the future and the way it works and the way the inversion is affecting normal time. Because I love this acting as almost a time travel story. It definitely is to an extent. But I love that it isn't like you're just jumping back and you're back there. I like how time has to move backwards for it to move forwards. You're not just jumping back in time and you're starting a new place. You physically have to move back to that point because time is perfectly linear. You can't just jump back and alter the past to move to a new future. Whatever happens in the past already happened to you, and you just are moving back to that moment to play a different character in it. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of the film. I love when he's fighting himself. I love when he's in the car, but he doesn't know it at that point. Because I think it's so much more rewarding for time travel films when you get to see the past from two different versions. Instead of the person just going to the past and changing it and going back to a new future and being, oh, everything's perfect here. You're looking at the past and you're seeing all these things happen. You're like, why is this happening? And then you see the future self and you're like, oh, he's just doing it to the past, and we already know what's going to happen because we saw it. And I think that's such a fascinating and interesting way to tell the story. But I also think it makes the film so much more enjoyable and makes it a really fun time traveling film. Because I also think it grounds the time travel in a little bit less. It is definitely sci-fi. It's a 100% a sci-fi film. But it grounds it almost in a sense that you're not just jumping back, but you're doing it all backwards. So I think there's a lot of real life principles applied to it, and also ways that the film doesn't feel like it's cheating itself to get to an ending that they want to see. It feels like the film is fully fleshed out and doing everything they want to do to get to a desired ending. And I think that's such a great way to tell this story. And I really just love the way that this story just moves throughout itself and can really just encapsulate the audience, because I really love it. And I understand why this film alienates some people and isn't some people's favorites, because I completely understand how this film is confusing and how it can be hard to understand. But at least from my perspective, as someone who understood the first time, understood it more the second time, and really just loves watching it and loves the visuals, loves the inverted concept, loves the characters and the acting. The characters and the acting you can love no matter what. Like, I think there are so many great pieces of this film that I think are overshadowed by the fact that some people don't understand it. And I think I sat down and I said, you know what, I'm going to focus up, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to understand this movie. And I did. And I think some people expect to go into this movie thinking they can like half pay attention, and you're not going to get it. I really love that Christopher Nolan really tries to make films that you have to focus on, that you have to put effort into understand, because I think it makes it really rewarding when you do. And I think this is probably his hardest film to understand. I think if you can get Tenet, you can get any of his films. And I think this is a really great experience. I think you can go into this film and say, I understand films, or I've seen most of Christopher Nolan, not necessarily getting this or not necessarily have seen it. And you get to see it, and I think it's a really rewarding journey to go on to try to understand this film. And I really suggest that you watch this film, because maybe it takes a few watches to understand, and it really is so rewarding when you do, and it's such a fascinating and fun film to watch. So please don't give up on Tenet, even if you didn't understand the first time. Check it out. I think the way time is inverted is so beautiful. And with that, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.